boys and girls, and welcome to another episode of Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. Hope the show is finding everybody doing well. I know we're deep in the holiday season. We have Christmas right around the corner and New Year's right after that, and then it's 2023. But before we get out of 2023, we have another film coming out this year that is a juggernaut. And I don't know if it's going to be as much of a juggernaut as its predecessor is. The film that's coming out, at least the time of this episode's release, Avatar The Way of Water, will be released in theaters this Friday. And I remember the just phenomenon that took place with Avatar. And it was a juggernaut, man. The movie made over $1 billion. I think close to $2 billion, if I'm not mistaken. I know it was a lot, but I mean, my God, what a film! And it deserved every penny. That's the crazy part. It wasn't just a moneymaker for moneymaker's sake. This was actually an excellent film. It was nominated for Best Picture and all that other good stuff. But James Cameron had been promising a sequel. Actually, he had promised like 4 or 5 new sequels to Avatar. You know, he enjoyed creating this world and these characters, and he wanted to explore more of Pandora. And that's fine. But we had to wait for what, 15 years? I don't know. The first Avatar came out in 2009. So, I mean, it's been so long. Now, granted, I don't have a problem with sequels taking their time. I really, this is going to sound crazy or hypocritical and all that other good stuff, but I'm not a big fan of quick sequels. You know, if a movie come out, last year and this year we get the sequel to it, unless it was like a back-to-back type thing, or a part 1, part 2 situation where you're left with a cliffhanger in part 1 and you want to immediately get back into that world. For instance, like Avengers Infinity War, right? That came out in 2018, and then Avengers Endgame came out in 2019, to finish that story up, because you had to, because of what happened in Infinity War. You really needed a resolution. You couldn't wait 15 years for a resolution to this. So I get that. But when studios hurry up and greenlight a movie because it was successful, or greenlight the sequel rather, because the first film was so successful and they want to strike while the iron is hot, and it's like a fast production, the screenplay ain't really polished, they rush into production and is not as good as the original. I'm used to seeing sequels that rival the original, because they took time. I'm trying to think of a example of a fast turnaround to a sequel that wasn't as good as the first film. I guess you could say, this is a bad example, but I don't feel this way, but I know a lot of people feel this way. Die Hard and Die Hard 2. I thought Die Hard 2 rivaled the first one. Even it's not as good as the first one. It's not better than the first one, but it's still good. Let's say it that way. But a lot of people didn't like Die Hard 2. I enjoyed Die Hard 2. But it was like a 2-year gap. I think Die Hard came out in 88 and Die Hard 2 came out in 90, I believe. Maybe 91. I can't remember. But a lot of fans of the original didn't like it. But to be honest with you, thinking back in hindsight, you're never going to recapture that magic from the first Die Hard. Die Hard sits in his own right. So that was a bad example. All those sequels failed, even though they were good in their own right, except for A Good Day to Die Hard. That was horrible. But all the other ones were real good. Just recently, now we saw the biggest gap between sequels just this year with Top Gun Maverick. when Top Gun, the original Top Gun came out in what, 86, maybe 80. No, no. I'm right. It was 86. The original came out in 86. We just got the sequel in 2022. you know, but you could tell, obviously, they took their time with that story. It's one of the best films of the year. Um, Now, when it comes to Avatar and Avatar, The Way of Water, I'm confident in this reason and this reason alone. And this is what that was the long 5 minute answer response rather to a easy question. Why I didn't feel super excited at first when they first announced it or first trailer came out, because I honestly forgot. I honestly forgot that they were making another Avatar film. And finally, the trailer came out a few months ago, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. And that was it. It didn't knock my socks off. I was like, okay, it looks like we're back on Pandora now with water. You know, we, we're getting the water world version of Avatar. Okay, whatever. And then a couple of weeks ago, um, well, before I get to a couple of weeks ago, the second trailer came out about a month or so ago, maybe 2 months ago, and it was a real good trailer. I said, okay, this is exciting. The visuals look amazing. All the characters are back. Well, most of them are back. Yeah, it looks good. Looks good, because I had no doubts with that, because it's James Cameron, and that's who we're going to talk about today. Eventually, when I stop rattling on, but I'm like, okay, it looks good. And then a couple of weeks ago, a switch kicked on, and I all automatically just started getting hyped up for this movie just out of the blue. It was just a random night. I'm sitting around, and I was, oh my god, I can't wait for this movie. And it was like, it was like, I don't know. It was like a spiritual experience. I don't know what happened. I just I felt something. I was like, I need to see this movie, and I need to see it in IMAX. I need to see it in 3D, because James Cameron. Why would I ever doubt James Cameron? And I never had in my entire life doubted this man as far as his films. I can, without a doubt, say I love every single movie this man makes. And I'm not saying like. Now, Steven Spielberg is my favorite filmmaker. Um, it been times he questioned, he made me question it, but I can't take away from how his films affected me growing up and how I grew a love for film through his films, whether he directed it or produced it. But there are some films in his filmography that I don't care for. There are some films that I watched once and I would never watch again. I'm not gonna say I hate them, but once was enough for me. AI, artificial intelligence, is one example. I seen it once. I don't need to see it again. I did not like that movie. I didn't care for it. The Terminal, even though it was a good movie, I don't need to see it again. I'm done with it. Bridge of Spies, I did not care for that. So there's that. So there are some little bumps in the road going down his filmography. When it comes to James Cameron, who, I'm telling you, every single film he directed now, I'm just talking about the ones he directed. Because if we go to the ones that he co-wrote or produced only, there's some kinks in the armor there. But I'm just focusing on his directing career. Every single one. Let's run them down. First and foremost, I'm not going to count Piranha 2. I'm not going to count that. That was his first movie back in 1982. I'm not going to count that because that really wasn't his movie. You know, it was just it was what it was. If you ever seen Piranha 2 from 1982, you know what I'm saying. It was just one of those throwaway horror movies from that era. You know, the old Roger Corman type movies, But that's besides the point. Now, the one that was his baby, the one that just kickstarted his career to the atmosphere, and he hasn't came down yet. And that was in 1984, one of the best years of film. I, I keep promising on this show that I'm going to go back to 1984 because 1984 was the best year for films. I promise you, I'm going to get around to it. But this is one of the reasons why The Terminator. That was released in 1984. Not only launched his career, but he launched Arnold Schwarzenegger's career through that film. And I never, and mind you, I'm 5, 6 years old around the time when I saw it. And I have never seen a film like that because I've only been on the earth for 5 or 6 years. But I knew I was watching something special because I haven't seen anything like that since. And they've made about 50 other Terminator films and they hadn't touched that. Well, T2, but I'm going to get to that when we get down this list. But that's for different reasons. Terminator holds a special place because Terminator had a perfect mix of science fiction and horror. I don't think a lot of people equate the Terminator with horror. But that movie had some horror elements in it, and it was frightening. At least for a 6-year-old Kevin. It scared me to death because the thing like when Arnold Schwarzenegger, or the Terminator rather, when you thought you killed him and you finally you blew him up. I'm talking about the end of the movie. Spoilers if you haven't seen the Terminator from 1984. Where have you been? But anywho's, when you finally destroyed him, you blew him up in the truck, and you get the cliched ending when the hero and the heroine come together and they kissing, and they're silhouetted by this big giant fireball from the wreckage of that truck. And all of a sudden in the background you see stuff starting to move, and you see the entire skeleton of this Terminator, this metal frame, emerge with the red eyes. That was horror. When when the Terminator, when they ran into that factory and the Terminator's coming after, it's like a slasher film. And before that, you get the science fiction element. You have the romantic element. This is the one of the rare films where you believe two characters fall in love after only knowing each other for 6 hours. You believed it because it was well constructed. And man, I'm it's still one of my favorite movies ever. James Cameron knocked that out the park. So you thinking, okay, lucky break. First at bat, he hits a home run. All right, let's see him come back to the plate this time. And in 1986, just 2 years later, he had the task of making the sequel to what some people regard as one of the best science fiction movies ever, and that's Alien. And he was given the task to make the sequel, Aliens. And I remember, it's funny, I remember growing up around that time, and I saw, it's crazy, I saw Aliens before I saw Alien. Because there was so much hype behind Aliens. And Alien came out, I think, when I was 6 months old or something. So I didn't get to see that until after the fact. But this is a sequel that you didn't need to see the original to follow this film. And that's due to the writing. That's due to the direction. You know, yeah, there was some tidbits in there that it helped, you know, like with Ripley and why she was wandering in space and all that stuff. All right, cool. But I just accepted it for what it was at the time. And then when I did see Alien, okay, it all made sense. But it wasn't at the time, it wasn't important to me. I didn't care. I just wanted to see the aliens. And my God, you had these space marines, and and all the aliens jumping around. Then you had the Queen emerge, and the big showdown at the end with the Queen. And oh my, is this what is this? What am I watching? What am I watching right now? It was just bananas. Knocked it out the park. About 3 years later, in 1989, he did something innovative. Uh, a film that I wasn't excited for when it came out because I didn't know what the story was. I didn't know what it was about. And I ended up watching it when it finally came to television. And I was so disappointed that I didn't go to the theater to go see. And that was The Abyss. The Abyss is probably one of his most underrated films in his filmography. This was so innovative because around that time, you didn't have big, right now, CGI is just the bee's knees. You see CGI in romantic comedies these days. So that is in everything. It's in everything. But back then, like in 89, late 80s, early 90s, it was sparingly used, and it was only used for like a frame or two, a couple of frames, and all this other stuff, or for one particular scene. And it didn't look good. But but in The Abyss, the special effects just went up 50 notches. Like, wow. Now, granted, we had Star Wars and other films around that time that had excellent special effects, but not like this. You saw water, the little water creature thing that was going through that little station under the water. It was, look, it's still amazing to me. I would love to see that re-released in theaters so I can go see it in a theater, or remastered, or see it in 4K. I'm pretty sure they have a 4K version of this movie. I need to look it up and see, because I would buy it. And I haven't bought a Blu-ray or DVD in God knows how long, but I will buy that in 4K. That is a beautifully made movie, and the acting, Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth. I can't think of her name. I know Mary Elizabeth, but the acting in it was awesome, and it was just once again knocked it out the park. 2 years later, he decided to make a sequel to the film that kickstarted his career, kickstarted Arnold Schwarzenegger's career, and that was Terminator 2: Judgment Day, or T2. Depending on who you ask, depending on what you read, or depending on what your opinion is, this is widely regarded as one of the greatest action movies ever made. And I'm in that camp. I remember seeing that teaser trailer. And look, people, this is before YouTube. This is before you can look stuff up on, on Google and all that other foolishness and see trailers. You had to go to the theater to see a trailer. And I can't, I'm getting old. I can't remember what movie it was I went to go see in 91 or 1990, whenever it was that I saw that teaser trailer. Or it could have been for the Super Bowl. You know how the Super Bowl usually show those trailers and stuff like that during the game. It could have been that. I can't remember, like I said, but that's not even important. The trailer dropped, and I had no idea that they was making a sequel. Like I said, it had been what, close to 8, 9 years since the original. What, 84? This came out in 91. Yeah, it was what, 7 years. And so you're like, okay, I didn't know this was happening. I thought the story was wrapped up kind of perfectly in the first film, but they found the way to continue the story, and it was perfect. Uh, yeah, that teaser trailer when you see the construction of the Terminators in this giant factory, and the the skeleton goes into this little mechanism. I'm pretty sure you can find that teaser trailer on YouTube. Uh, it goes into this mechanism that puts its flesh on it, and the flesh comes off. I mean, the machine opens up, and you see the flesh on the machine. This big old hulking fella, and you're like, "Wait, Arnold Schwarzenegger's coming back? He's coming back. He's back. He said he was going to be back, and he's really back." And it showed up. It was him. I'm like, "Oh my god, they doing another Terminator!" And immediately you're like, "Okay, Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to be a bad guy again." I mean, because yeah, he was the bad guy in Terminator, but after that, he's been a good guy. Predator, Commando, the list goes on and on. And so he's going to go back to being a bad guy, and then they found a way to flip it to where he's the actual hero in this, and it's like, oh, mind blown. And the action sequences and the special effects involved with the T-1000, I believe, uh, unbelievable, unbelievable, and it still holds up. All these films hold up. Everything I've talked about thus far holds up to this day. To this day, nothing looks dated at all. Maybe D Terminator because of the style, the clothes, and the soundtrack and stuff. But I mean, you know what I'm talking about. It holds up in quality. So he did T2 Terminator Day, Judgment Day, and he followed that up with reteaming with Arnold Schwarzenegger yet again in 1994 with True Lies. True Lies, once again, underrated, underrated. Even though it made his money, all his films were success. James Cameron has never made a box office bomb or a flop or anything. All his movies turn to gold. So True Lies was no exception. It's probably in the lower tier of the films he's made as far as money wise, but I feel it's one of his best. This was a comedy. It's an action film, but this was a pure comedy. I remember going to the theater to see this. I remember which theater I was in. I remember who I went with. It was one of those experiences. And True Lies was the film that I just knew after that, if I was to ever make films, it was going to be something like a True Lies. It was going to have heavy action and heavy comedy. And this was it. Honestly, why it resonates with me so much is because I was expecting just a, you know, full on action, typical Arnold Schwarzenegger film. Now he's a spy and he's going on these adventures, I guess you could say. And it was so much more than that. It was so much more than that. And this was intentionally campy. It was so silly. Some of the stuff in it was so dumb, but it fit the story. It was supposed to be. And I loved it. I love this movie. It is one of my guilty pleasures, if it counts as a guilty pleasure. But it is I mean, outstanding. Now, I see that CBS is about to release a TV show based on the movie called, amply enough, True Lies. I saw the trailer for it. It's a hard pass. It's a hard pass. Number one, you cannot make. I don't want to see a week to week procedural of True Lies. I don't want to see it. Now, with that being said, I'm probably gonna check out the first episode. I probably will, just because I'm a huge fan of the movie. But I don't see myself being week to week like, oh man, True Lies coming on. I gotta go. There's none of that. I don't see that happening. But hey, it may shock me. We'll see. But I know one thing that won't. It is the movie from 1994. It is just excellent. Then uh, you want to talk about innovative, and I wanted to save this to later to talk about this, but I can't when it comes to this guy. Every film he makes, every film he makes is so innovative. It changes filmmaking as we know it. Every time he gets behind the camera, he changes the way filmmakers make films. You know, because the stuff he do, no other filmmaker has done before him. I mean, going back to the Abyss, working with the special effects the way he did, that opened the door for computer generated characters, that or monsters and stuff like that, because it wasn't done before that. But the way he did it, because people thought it couldn't be done, but he did it. That's how we got Jurassic Parks. That's how we got uh, Star Wars prequels and stuff like that, because of mov- movies like that. With Terminator 2 reinventing the action film genre, he just touches stuff on a whole nother level. It just brings it to a whole nother level. And in 1997, he took a story that universally, I'll say 90% of the people on planet Earth know about, and just turned it up to 11. And that is Titanic. He made that movie. It's a 3 hour long epic love story. you know, and it's from the director of Terminator 2 and True Lies and Aliens. He made this epic love story on this doomed voyage of a ship. And for 3 hours, people sat there, me being one of them. Actually, I sat there twice. I went to the theaters to see it twice. Uh, and I enjoyed it each and every time. And you know what's going to happen at the end of this movie, but you still on the edge of your seat. And it was, I mean, just beautifully shot. His detail, his attention to detail, how the ship sunk, how it split in half, how the special effects worked in that third act with the ship sinking, because the entire third act was the ship sinking. you know, it didn't just hit a rock and it just went bloop. No, it took time. It took on water, and how it affected everybody on that ship. Oh my God, what a movie! What a movie! I haven't watched that in a while. I have to do a rewatch. It's been a couple of years since I sat down and watched Titanic from beginning to end. I've seen bits and pieces of it that when they throw it on television. I'll catch. I'll sit down and watch about 20 minutes of it if I catch it in the middle or something like that. But I never sat down from beginning to end. Ooh boy, I want to say maybe 10 years ago, and I'm being generous with the 10. It's been a while, but I remember everything about it because I watched it about 20 times. But it is such a great movie, and it deserved every Academy Award that it received, including Best Director for James Cameron. After that, he took some time off. After that, he was going to go right into a film, and I wanted to mention this because I was super excited for it. This is when I started following, you know, news outlets and the tea leaves, and trying to find out what's coming up next, what's new. Getting the magazines and things of that nature to see what's in the works, what's in production, and uh, I saw an interview with James Cameron, who at that time was my favorite director. It still is in many ways. And he was in pre-production. And I say pre-production, he was really just writing the treatments and stuff for his next project, which was going to be Spider-Man. And I immediately when I heard that, I went into puberty. I mean, I started feeling things in places I never felt it before. It was just like, man, you mean to tell me James Cameron is about to make a Spider-Man movie, and he was going to cast Leonardo DiCaprio as Peter Parker and Arnold Schwarzenegger as Doc Ock. He had, oh my God, I forgot all the rest of the cast that he had already planned it out. And I was like, man, give me this movie. But something happened with the rights to the Spider-Man character. It ended up going to Sony, and it's still at Sony, and he didn't make the movie. But what he did do, he did one of his changes did end up in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, and because they took pieces from his treatment and incorporated it into the uh, uh, 2002, I believe, Spider-Man movie, and that was changing the web shooters. Instead of having the web shooters, the webs were going to come out of Peter Parker's wrist, which is what we saw in Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. So that was a James Cameron change. That wasn't Sam Raimi. I know a lot of people get mad and uh wanna wanna tar and feather Sam Raimi for making that change. No, that wasn't him. That was James Cameron's idea. And actually I thought that was a good idea uh for a little while. And then and then when they started going into another story where one of the joys of Spider-Man, if you read the comics or whatever, uh, is when Spider-Man runs out of web shooters and he has to think on his feet on how to get out of a certain situation, and that kind of takes that away when it's coming out of his wrist. But they tried to kind of dance around it in Spider-Man 2. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, he didn't get to do that, and that kind of hurts my heart. And it's kind of funny, the point I brought up the Spider-Man movie. James Cameron recently, and I'm talking like in the last week or so, has been just poo-pooing on Marvel films and comic book movies as a whole, saying that it's ruining cinema and there's no action movies. Those aren't action stars. Well, actually, that was Quentin Tarantino that said there's no movie stars. They're just heroes. They're superheroes. But he pretty much amen that those big blockbuster superhero movies are kind of ruining cinema. I'm like, man, you was about to make one. you know, I mean, you didn't have that energy when you was working on that Spider-Man movie. But that's neither here nor there. Plus, everything you make is a big blockbuster film. He don't make any low budget movies. I don't think James Cameron has directed a film under $100 million. Every film he makes goes over budget. Now, every film he makes the money back, but that's it is what it is. But after Titanic, and he couldn't get the Spider-Man project off the ground, we had to wait 12 years. 12 years before he got back behind the camera. And lo and behold, would you know it, it was for the 2009 film that we're going to review today. And that is Avatar. Now, around this time, there was a very popular show on television that I used to watch. I was a big fan of. Wasn't a fan of the film adaptation, but I loved the show, and it was Avatar: The Last Airbender. Strangely enough, around the same time as the release of Avatar, the film adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender was being released in theaters too, which was directed by M. Night Shyamalan, which was horrible. But it that's not we're not going to go into that. This film made that film change its name. It's The Last Airbender. And people were kind of confused. At least I was at first. I was like, well, they're gonna have to change the name of that James Cameron film because I'm a huge fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and so I'm like, okay, that's what I want to see. But no, they bend it. That's how powerful James Cameron is. They made a whole show change his name, but they should have. He should have made him not make that movie. But once again, that's a discussion for another day. But yeah, man, Avatar, the promotion leading up to it, and this is a 3D film, and up to this point, 3D films have been kind of poo poo. You ain't really seen a good 3D movie in God knows how long. I don't think I ever sat in a theater and enjoyed a 3D movie. Prior to 2009. All of them were horrible, man. You only saw the 3D effects in spurts, and then when you did see it, had to kind of tilt your head and in those horrible red and blue glasses, and I wore glasses. Oh, I still do, but I wear contacts now. But at the time, I was wearing glasses, and so I'm putting the 3D glasses on top of my glasses, and it just didn't have the same effect. And I'm like, oh my god, this was a waste of money. This was a waste of money. Um, you talking about hurt? So when this was going to be released in 3D, and James Cameron shot this in 3D, and that's the difference. Is the difference between being converted to 3D and being shot in 3D. When a film is shot in 3D, you everything seamlessly blends together. So you kind of like, okay, this looks beautiful. When it's converted, it wasn't originally shot in 3D film. So when they converted, you can tell it looks fake. The backgrounds look fake. The special effects look fake. Everything looks fake, and you lose uh, 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 the effect of the film, and you, you ultimately don't enjoy it. It's best you just go see it in its regular form. Uh, Avatar wasn't that. Avatar wasn't that. Avatar was so good that I watched this movie in IMAX in 3D from the bottom row. I had a headache for 3 days after watching this movie, but I was determined to watch this movie. The reason being the theater was packed. This is before you could reserve seats, so I'm sitting in there. I had to hurry up, get my tickets, and because I was running late. Well, let me say this: I was, I got what I deserved because I didn't go with my wife, and this is why I say this. Around this time, 2009 and prior, and probably a couple of years after this, I didn't go to the movies with my wife. Every now and then we'll go to the movies, and together rather. And I, I don't know. I was just a selfish idiot back then. Yeah, I can say that now. I'm grown. I'm grown. I can say that now. I'm past that. But I just didn't go, and I think she was seriously hurt by the fact that I didn't go see this with her. Another film was The Dark Knight, and I know she was upset about that. But that's besides the point. Point is, I got what I deserved. I had to watch this movie in the manner that I had to watch it, and I see that now. Actually, I saw it around the time it happened. I felt that then. Now, I deserve it. I deserve it. But now I'm glad to report we go to see every movie together. Now, anyways, yeah, I had to watch this movie in the worst seat in the house. Literally, the worst seat in the house. I had to get up a couple of times and go outside, in the little walkway area and take off the glasses and because I was feeling nauseous. I had to look around. It was a bad experience. I did end up going and standing up on the side, on the wall and watch it from there. Uh, for for like 3/4 of the movie. It was uncomfortable, but it was better than sitting in that seat. But I did end up going back and watching it again, with better seats. But yeah, that was a horrible experience. But despite the experience that I had physically, emotionally, I was invested. I was there. The movie is so good, and I can tell you this: does it still hold up right now? This is the rare James Cameron film I can say it doesn't hold that same magic that it did in 2009. It's still excellent. It's still great, but it kind of lost a little. It lost a little magic because at that time we have never seen anything like this before, and quite honestly, we haven't seen anything like it since. Many has tried, with the motion capture and stuff like that. Although those films look good, with those characters and whatnot, it doesn't look as seamless as Avatar, as the Navi, in this whole world that was constructed from the mind of James Cameron. It was beautiful, you know, and the story, the reason it doesn't, I wouldn't consider it a classic film, or a something original as far as the story, because the story is not original. That's the reason why I wouldn't put it in the classic category, because this is the pretty much Dances with Wolves with with better special effects. I mean that's basically what this is. Um, I'm still in love with this movie. I'm in love with the world. That's what it is, and that's why I'm so excited to dive back in, no pun intended, into Avatar: The Way of Water. The world, the way it was just you wanted to go on Pandora, even though it's the most dangerous place in the universe. It seems like for a human being, you can't breathe the air. Everything there wants to kill you, but it looks amazing. Um, the film stars Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Stephen Lang, Michelle Rodriguez, and Sigourney Weaver, and uh, many more. But Sam Worthington, Hollywood was really trying to make something out of Sam Worthington around that time. Sam Worthington was in one of the Terminator sequels. Oddly enough, he was in some other movies. I can't even remember now, but he was popping up in everything around that time. He, everything. This was supposed to be Hollywood's next best thing, and I like Sam Worthington, but I never saw him as a movie star. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't that guy that if he pops up on a poster, I'm like, oh, Sam Worthington, I got to go see this movie. That never happened, and that's no offense to Sam Worthington. I think he's a real good actor, but uh, he's just not a star. Somebody who's bankable. Uh, and it and that, like I said, no knock on him because I don't think anybody is. To be 100% honest with you, other than Tom Cruise, you put Tom Cruise on a poster, just him standing there, you're gonna go see that movie. He doesn't need to be in a cockpit of a jet or jumping off a building or something like that. You just know it's a Tom Cruise film. You're gonna go see it. That's a movie star. Same thing with Dwayne Johnson or The Rock. You're gonna go see it. Even though a lot of people didn't go see Black Adam, but that's understandable in, in a lot of ways. But prior to Black Adam, you'll go see a Dwayne Johnson movie. Uh, I don't see that from Sam Worthington, even though he's been in some blockbuster films, this being one of the biggest of all time, and as Avatar. And he was great in here. He played a paralyzed veteran, and he goes on this little assignment to Pandora, and uh, gets the chance to be in this Avatar, hence the title. And he can walk. He's part of the Navi. He falls in love with one of the Navi females, played by Zoe Saldana, who I was making the case at the time of this film's release that the Academy Award find a way to nominate Zoe Saldana for her portrayal of oh my god, what's her name in the movie? Natiri, I think her name was. Doesn't matter. Point is, she was, she gave an awesome performance, and you could tell through that special effects. This is how potent the motion capture was. The special effects was the facial expressions. You could tell if you've seen these actors in other films and you notice their facial expression, their little ticks and stuff like that. It showed through this uh, special effects makeup, and you could tell even with the voice acting. There's an element there that she was giving this powerful performance, and I would argue it was Oscar worthy. It truly was. And I'm a big component of considering these motion capture actors and actresses for Academy Awards or any kind of awards, to be honest with you, because there is acting involved in this, people. Look at Andy Serkis, who did a phenomenal job in the Planet of the Apes films and the Lord of the Ring films and King Kong and so many more. Now you see Andy Serkis as Andy Serkis in a lot of films. He pops up in the Batman as Alfred and Claw on Black Panther. So we finally get to see him in front. Him in his all his glory, but he really cut his bones doing motion capture. Snoke in the Star Wars films. Uh, yeah, man. But I really believe that these people should be considered for these awards, honestly. And she really opened my eyes to that, because it was an awesome performance. Awesome performance. She stole the movie. It was her movie. It honestly was her movie. Sigourney Weaver, man, seeing her team back up with James Cameron, who they worked together, of course, in Aliens. Uh, her character, she was basically James Cameron. She said that her performance is based on James Cameron. That bitter type of person, mean, hard to work with guy. That's who James Cameron is. But well, woman, she's woman. I'm sorry, but y'all get the point I'm trying to get at. But everything worked. Everything worked. It was so cliche-ish. You've seen this film before, you've seen this story before, but it was told in such a different light and different way that you could care less. This was a big budget remake of Dances with Wolves. But despite that, and Dances with Wolves was a great film. I mean, once again, it won Academy Awards. And so you know, not knocking it, just saying what it is. But I think honestly, this was more of a world building movie, so we can explore more that was on James Cameron mind or is on James Cameron mind, and we'll see that with The Way of Water and the rest that he has planned. But yeah, this was going back to Sam Worthington. I wanted to touch in on it, kind of got away from me. He wasn't initially the first choice. He wasn't the first choice. The first choice was Matt Damon. Matt Damon, who is Jason Bourne, uh, he turned down the film because and I'm not knocking him for it because it was his successful franchise. He wanted to focus on the Jason Bourne films, but James Cameron offered him 10% of the film's profit, and he turned it down. The film went on to make close to $2 billion. I'm pretty sure Matt Damon, every day you have to do a wellness check. Somebody got to call him, like, just checking on you. You all right? Just checking on you. You doing all right? You know, because you have to do that with me. My God, you want to talk about regret? Oh my God, man, I would be hot. I would be hot. And then they're making another one. Oh my God, I would be hot. Ooh, but yeah, but I feel them though. Jason Bourne movies, they were fire. I'm not mad at them, but 10%. But in any event, Avatar, think is one of the one of the most groundbreaking films of recent history. Uh, like I said, it doesn't really hold up as much as far as a story, uh, but so innovative with its special effects and the action. Of course, uh, nobody can argue that James Cameron doesn't know how to film action. He's been doing it his whole career, and he's been great at it his whole career. And it didn't fall short in Avatar. Avatar from 2009 gets a letter grade of an A minus. I think it is a uh, very monumental film, a film that needs to be preserved in in the history of film, and I'm so excited for this sequel, Avatar: The Way of Water. Uh, Speaking of Avatar: The Way of Water, um, I'm excited for it. At the same time, I hope it does well. Uh, we already got two other sequels coming, and I mean, coming. Avatar 3 is scheduled to be released in 2024, and Avatar 4 is scheduled for release in 2026. Avatar 3 is already filmed. They filmed it at the same time as The Way of Water. So that's in post production. So they're that's coming. That's rain, sleet, or snow. We're getting part 3. Um, they're currently filming part 4. So they're not stopping. They're very confident that this film is going to do well. I think it's going to do well, but I don't know if it's going to be as big as the first one. And maybe it doesn't need to be. But my thing is, and my fear is, people going to see the numbers. And if it's not as big as the first one, it doesn't make $1 billion. If it only makes 800 million, they're going to mark it as a disappointment. I mean, 800. If a movie make $800 million, I don't think it's gonna. I don't think you can classify that as a disappointment. But people are fickle. If it doesn't match, equal to, or greater than the original, financially, like, oh, it was a failure. It's not a failure. How is that a failure? That's like the argument now among film pundits that Black Panther was kind of a failure. It was kind of a letdown, even though the film made, currently it's still making money, but it's probably going to kind of subside now that this film is coming out. But Black Panther Wakanda Forever made close to $800 million. And being as though the first Black Panther made over $1 billion, a lot of people are disappointed in that sphere. They feel like, oh man, it was supposed to surpass the first one. Well, I never thought it would. you know, I never thought it would. And to be 100% honest with you, it wasn't as good as the first one. So what? Why would you expect it to make more? I'm happy it made what it made. I mean, I think that's awesome, man. That's a, it got some of my money, you know. So hey, man, that's a win-win. But yeah, I think it's gonna be success. I think Avatar, the way of water, will be successful. It's definitely just like Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Will get my money. I'm going to see it today at the time of this release, not today as I'm recording it. I as soon as I said that, I was like, "Am I? No, it actually I'm going to see it the day it comes out with the fam." With the fam. I'm not making that mistake again. And already reserved my seats. So I would not be at the bottom this time either. And it is in 3D. Because some of the reviews that I've read, and typically don't read reviews from other critics and stuff, but I wanted to get kind of a gauge of where it's at, and it's pretty much where I think it's going to be at. So I'm excited for that. But they say the majority of them are saying go see it in 3D. It's worth the little extra. I don't know, $3-4. I'm saying that until I had to pay for it. Even though I did pay for it, I don't know how much I paid for them tickets. At the time, I didn't care. I just bought them, which is a problem. Which is probably why my wife always mad at me because I don't look. I don't read the fine print. Uh, it's, uh, it's a miracle we're not in the poorhouse. That's all glory to my wife, because if it weren't for her, we'll be in the poorhouse, because I just do. she she reads the fine print 3 or 4 times over, but I just go with it. But what the point I was trying to make anyway? Yeah, I didn't I don't know how much extra it was for the 3D. Yeah, I just bought them. I gotta look into that. I gotta look into that. It don't matter. They bought now, so it is what it is. But Merry Christmas. That's the Christmas present. If we don't have any Christmas presents this year, it's because I bought the extra spent the extra $10 a ticket for 3D. It is what it is. Anyways, people, do you remember your first experience of going to see Avatar? Are you excited for this new film? Do you think it took too long, or do you think it's long enough? I mean, sometimes it's good to have some space. I don't know about 13 years worth of space, but hey, space nonetheless. Let me know. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can look me up on Twitter at KB Radio Network and other social media platforms. Just look up DKB Radio Network. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, don't forget about the 5 stars, reviews, and sharing the show, which helps the show out tremendously. Everybody, thank you for joining me today as we discuss one of Hollywood's greatest directors, James Cameron, and his opus Avatar from 2009, and preparation of his latest release, Avatar: The Way of Water. Everybody, hope you're enjoying your holiday season thus far. Hope you got your Christmas lights and Christmas trees up right now, finished with all your decorations and stuff. And this coming from a man who haven't put up the tree yet. It's the middle of the month. We're about a week and a half away from Christmas, and I have not put up the tree. And nobody has asked me. It's funny. Nobody. I have gotten 0 requests about that tree. 0. I don't know what that means. I honestly don't. It's actually quite frightening. That being said, because as soon as I say, I don't know, a chill went over my body. I think I'm gonna put up that tree. I'm gonna put it up tomorrow. I'm gonna put it up tomorrow. Can't do it tonight. It's too late tonight. But I'm gonna do it tomorrow. I don't know what's going on. Everybody forgot about Christmas. What's going on right now? Anyways, everybody, enjoy your holiday season. Like I was saying before, want you all to know I love you. Continue to love one another, and until we speak again, You all be blessed.